first, Ryan, you have to understand that there is no market standard right now. People think, oh, how do you compete with the dominance of Bitcoin and Ethereum? It's like less than 1% of all developers who write software for those platforms. So no one's won. Okay, if you look at application development, how many cell phone developers were there in 2005? There just were none. It was a super rare profession. If you in 2005 say, I write software for cell phones, it'd be like, wow, that's kind of hard, weird stuff. In 2015, you're like, oh yeah, that makes sense, because it was the dominant standard by then. So no standard has set. It will set. And it's important to understand that our competition right now is not Ethereum versus EOS versus Tezos versus Cardano. That's like a bunch of kids at the kids' table squabbling with each other. The big table are the Microsofts, the Apples, the Googles, the Samsungs, because they have gargantuan network effect with their hardware and software that has already been deployed. Microsoft could wake up tomorrow and say, we're going to create Microsoft token, and the wallet for it's going to be built into Microsoft Windows, and we'll have a cloud wallet with our cloud backend on Azure. Then all of a sudden they have 3 billion users. And this is why Libra was so significant, because they were thinking, God, if that thing came out, they have 3 billion users with Facebook. The same for Google with Android, the same for Samsung actually putting a crypto wallet into their phone. So in the next 3 to 5 years, all of GAFA, the FANGs, these guys are going to get into our space, and they're going to leverage the fact that they already have billions of customer relationships to basically roll out either their own solutions or open standards. And so that is the war that we as an ecosystem are going to face. And it's not clear how to win that war, because those incumbents have tremendous built-in network effects, advantages and regulatory advantages. And the regulators are more apt to trust them because they're regulated entities than to trust the emerging crypto space. So this is one of the principal reasons why we've chosen our commercial focus on the developing world, because even if GAFA does that, it's not going to change the day-to-day affairs of the people in Ethiopia or Uganda or South Africa. The reality is that these guys are unbanked, and they're in a period of flux where their economies are growing at 10 to 15% per year, and the consequences of globalization are forcing them over the next 5 years to pick an identity standard, a regulatory standard, supply chain standards, and so forth. And so right there, you can get 1 billion new users that are coming online with no vendor preferences. And so then you go to them and you say, do you want a system where one group of people get to decide everything for you, and those are white people in Silicon Valley who have never been to your country? Or do you want a system where the power is pushed to the edges, you're in total control of this thing, and even your own government can't take it from you or screw it up? And they'll say, we would prefer the latter if we can get away with it. That would be great. And so how you get in there is you do network plays. Like, for example, just look at coffee farming in Ethiopia. There, you have a situation where Starbucks starts saying, guys, we're only going to buy coffee if it's fair trade and it's made in a sustainable way. So how the hell do you, as a smallholder coffee farmer in Ethiopia who has no tech, and you put your beans on the back of a donkey and ride it to a washing station, prove to Starbucks that you have these things? You need a supply chain. Oh, well, if you have a supply chain, what does that mean? You need a digital identity system, a payment system, you need a blockchain, all those things. The minute you create that, you bring 15 million farmers into a blockchain. And then you have the infrastructure to put a credit system, an insurance system. You can now all of a sudden tokenize the SMEs in the country and so forth. So these are the kinds of conversations we're having, not with everyday people, but with prime ministers and presidents and NGOs and aid organizations and so forth. And they're very productive conversations, and they have a 3 to 7 year time horizon. And Microsoft doesn't care too much about this. IBM doesn't care too much about this. They may claim it, but they look for the big stuff. The TAM is too small, and the lifetime value is too small for these marketplaces for them to get involved in. But if we get in early, then we'll grow as they grow. And over time, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, we become the Pan-African standard for everything, for regulation, the automation of compliance, for self-sovereign identity, and so forth. Now, in terms of what makes Cardano a useful platform, we term this, we have a term for it, we call it CCCI, Cardano commercially critical infrastructure. So basically, that means what collection of services does Cardano as a blockchain have to provide developers and infrastructure providers to be useful for DeFi and to be useful to solve real life problems. So you go in both directions. You look at what the industry's already built, and you can glean from that. You need stable coins and Oracle solutions and a multi-asset standard for both fungible and non-fungible, regulated, non-regulated. You need a metadata standard. You need good developer tools, these types of things, the nuts and bolts. And there's already a lot of great knowledge that's been produced about how to do that stuff well, from Chainlink on down. Then you look at the other side, which is you actually have to do stuff. Like in Georgia, we're right now putting all of the diplomas from the university system in Georgia on a blockchain. Those are real users, real things, 50,000 customers per year. So that teaches us a lot about how to integrate into government infrastructure. And in Ethiopia, we're right now doing a feasibility study, which will turn into a pilot for a currency for Addis Ababa with 4 million users to pay for utilities. So that teaches you real time how cash in, cash out works in real time, how payment systems actually be deployed to real life people. And then you build out partnerships. In Africa, telcos are the banks. This is where M-Pesa, these other things have come from. So we just signed a MOU with a ISP in Tanzania that's going to be building out cell phone infrastructure, so we can learn how that entire industry works, and we get better integrated and use these guys as a cash in, cash out point, create some decentralization in the telecommunications space. So again, these time horizons are long arc, but they inform the development of your commercially critical infrastructure. And then over time, that becomes a super resilient platform that the users know, A, is not quicksand. It's not going to change dramatically. It's going to evolve and grow like TCP/IP does. B, that is self-sustaining, that there's always funding available to build things on top of that. The treasury model is so powerful. It's like a VC in the sky that gets more and more money over time. And C, has a governance layer that admits decentralization. You know, you don't want a system where you have three guys who sit down and make a decision of where the system goes. You want a system where, as you gain more actors, the people at the edges get more and more power. So we think we've solved the tech side, and we think we've solved the social dynamic side. And it's just one of those things where you have to get enough sustainability in the funding so that you can get to a critical mass, and then the system gets completely deployed. And, you know, the other thing, Ryan, is that as we gain more momentum, I get more resources to do crazier and crazier things. Like, I had a great conversation with some people in the space industry about building a satellite network. A LEO network with quantum key exchange as a layer 0 solution to be the network backbone for Cardano. If we get to a point where the treasury system can give us $250 million, I can build that, and now I don't even need to use the internet to run the world financial operating system. I have my own internet for it. So not this year, but in 3 to 5 years, we could be there. You know, in fact, we were there in 2017. So it's very easy for the industry to get us back there. So it's one of those positive reinforcement feedback loops. And the other thing is, you look at, where does the brain of our ecosystem live? And with Ethereum, it's Vitalik. With EOS, it's Dan. With Ripple, it's a small group of engineers like Schwartz and so forth. With us, the brain lives in the academy. Because of the peer review process, more than 10 universities are actively writing papers for our ecosystem. And we have 4 labs. We just opened up one with the University of Wyoming. And what Wyoming was so special for is we funded that lab entirely with ADA. So do you know what that means? In the next 3 to 5 years, the students groups and professors can start treating the treasury of Cardano like the NSF and say, we'd like to set up a lab. They never have to have a conversation with me. They just submit a ballot to the Cardano blockchain and get $500,000 million and set up a cryptocurrency research lab. And I've never met them before. So we could wake up and have 50 or 100 academic labs all around the world creating peer-reviewed open source research directly for the Cardano ecosystem, and a beautiful decentralized orchestration. This is the machine that we've constructed, and these are the markets that we're in. So I'm not worried at all about GAFA. I'm not worried at all about Western regulation. I'm worried about the poorest, most vulnerable people and upgrading them up to basically have the same capabilities that you and I have. As for the rest of the actors, like the Ethereums and the Tezoses and so forth, I wish them well. And I wish them the best of success, and I hope that they get to where they want to go. And maybe they will, maybe they won't. Probably a collection of them will get to a certain critical mass, and then it'll just be like Google, the don't be evil phenomena. You always get corrupted. If you stay in those environments and you keep centralized too long, then basically you get co-opted, and you're told, if you want to stay out of jail, you want to keep all the money you have, you keep your lifestyle, you got to play ball. in which case the system will be perpetually centralized. Governments love Bitcoin because it's so easy to control, because the mining capacity is so easy to control. They understand the social dynamics of it. They understand how the development is done, who basically does what, and they understand how to track and trace it, and they understand basically the supply chain for the miners. So at any given time, if they really wanted to crack down on it, they could drop the hash rate 90% by just a couple of strategic arrests and a couple of strategic executions. That's the harsh reality of where Bitcoin lives. Cardano, on the other hand, or any of these proof-of-stake systems, they're ephemeral. Control can move from one country to another country like a transaction. So they're super, super hard to shut down, and they get more decentralized over time. And if you have decentralized governance and decentralized funding, there is no one entity or developer that you could throw in jail. And if you nestle your brain in the academy, what the hell are you going to do? Go raid MIT and Harvard? Go arrest the computer science department of University of Edinburgh? You can't do it. It's impossible. That is the key to winning. Focus on the poorest, build them up, give them the tool, focus on the trends, go where globalization is forcing people to upgrade, get 1 billion users, and build a system that gets more decentralized over time, and build a system that does not need the founders to be successful. That's the great lesson of Bitcoin, and that's what we're focused on as a project. As for the rest of the stuff, just be good at absorbing technology. If Ethereum becomes the standard, I have a strategy for pulling the EVM into Ledger. Then it's just like having the Java virtual machine running on your system. Okay, great. Does that mean Oracle wins? No. No one has to talk to Oracle if they do a Java project. So does that benefit Ethereum? Not at all. If another buddy is a market standard, I have a strategy for absorbing them. So it doesn't bother me at all. And, we live in a system where no one actor can win because we're talking about people's money. We're talking about people's identity. We're talking about people's privacy. Do we have one language? Do we have one religion? Do we have one of anything? No. Anytime you deal with controversy, you're going to have a plurality of opinions. So just focus on the people you want to help and build good things for them and have the right growth factors. And over 10, 20 years, you wake up, you have 100 million users, 1 billion users. And then, what the hell do you care about everything else? You've won. You've done what you wanted to do.